Hey, what's up, everyone? Sam Shaw here, founder of Wall Street Mastermind. I'm back today with another client interview for you guys. Very excited to be on with another Sam. Um,
Yeah.
and Sam just finished with his summer internship recruiting process, and was able to successfully get an outcome in what's been a very interesting year, right? 2020 with COVID and everything, and just wanted to get him to come on here and talk about his experience a little bit, and hopefully give you guys some takeaways that you can use in your own recruiting process, and help you, hopefully be more successful in your process. And so, Sam, thank you for taking the time to talk to us.
Mhm. No worries. Glad
Uh,
to do so.
yeah, and maybe to start, if you could introduce yourself real quick to our listeners, like what, just tell them a little bit about yourself, like what kind of candidate were you going through the process?
Yeah, for sure. So, personally speaking, I'm an international student studying semi-target school on the West Coast. I actually come up from like a CS background. I actually want to do CS in the first ever beginning, but then I realized that I want to do more kind of strategic and like the finance base. So I kind of make a great switch during around my freshman year last semester. Then want to do probably like banking or like consulting, but kind of join a different class, trying to join a different finance class on campus because we don't really get like the business background back in my school. So been
Yeah,
trying really hard to reach out to people, but get a kind of different advices.
yeah,
So didn't really have a great start at first, but then uh, great opportunity to join Wall Street Mastermind during my, I guess it's sophomore first semester. Then
yeah.
kind of realized there are certain ways for you to like can break into the recruiting, like shortcuts. Then yeah, being with the program for 1 year so far.
Got it. Okay, cool. So basically, so you go to a semi-target school and you try to make the switch from uh, computer science to business or to either financial consulting. Uh,
Yeah,
but you found that your school didn't have a lot of like these clubs that you were looking
resources.
for and
Mhm.
resources. Okay, got it. And so you have to kind of look outside of your school essentially. Okay. Um, and so I think you joined Wall Street Mastermind, like you said, around November of your sophomore year. So it's like
Yeah, that's true.
2 or 3 months into your sophomore year. And at the time, what had you already done up to that point as far as investment banking recruiting prep goes? Like, had you done anything on your own before coming to us, or what was that like before Wall Street Mastermind?
Yeah, so before that, I actually kind of asking for my seniors for some of advice. So first thing I did, I definitely just delve into all the like, Wall Street guys because they taught me that you have to memorize word by word for like everything on the guy.
Yeah,
And second, they definitely kind of doing the networking. So basically, they just kind of give me like a template for how are you going to write a different networking emails and reach out to different people.
yeah,
Like I didn't get a very good reply rate because of that. I think it's too standardized. So that's kind of really drove me to like think about what should I do to maybe like to improve my networking skills as well as kind of get a first step in like the internship or preparing for the big summer
yeah.
during like a fresh second year. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So how long were you doing that for on your own? Like, cause you decided to switch during the second semester of freshman year, it looks like. Uh,
Yeah,
and then you probably did what you just described for what, a good 3 or 4 months on your own, at least.
I guess more than that. It's like around half a year. Yeah.
After that. Okay. So during that time, like, how many do you remember roughly how many bankers you reached out to in those 6 months?
Um, I would say at least like 50
Okay.
because just trying to like uh, merge the mails, it's basically just sending the automatic emails to everyone.
Yeah.
I can find the email address. So
Yeah. Okay. So you reached out to about 50 bankers, and were you getting, how many responses roughly were you getting?
it's only around five, definitely lower than 10% at the point of time.
Okay. Wow. So that's pretty low. Um,
Yeah.
and then out of those five people that did respond, what happened then? You ended up jumping on a call with them and having like a 30-minute conversation, or what were you doing?
Um, yeah, for those five, I got a call like around 20 to 30 minutes each for each of them, but they just got one interview opportunities, which I would say is kind of lucky because they just can need one more person to like join at that point of time. It's very urgent, so I kind of took the opportunity. But I feel like I wouldn't took the risk when I'm recruiting for like the big firms like next year. So
Mhm. Got it. So like, did any of those calls? Did any of those calls end up becoming, I don't know, like referrals for interviews or super helpful connection or anything like that? Or was it, were you kind of feeling like you're having these conversations, but they're not really going anywhere?
yeah, honestly speaking, I just feel like only one of them I kind of got a click with the interviewer, the person I speak with. Then
Yeah.
all the rest is pretty much just pretty awkward at first. Really don't know what kind of question you ask in the first place. But then yeah, then only one is kind of click. Yeah,
Got it. Okay. So reached out to over 50 bankers. You clicked with about one of them, which is probably not what
two
you were
percent.
hoping for. Not
Yeah.
what you were hoping for. Okay. And so I understand why you said you started thinking about what you could do to improve your networking. So that makes sense. In terms of the guys that you were memorizing, were you just using like all the standard guys that everyone else uses? Like, I don't know, Wall Street Oasis or Breaking the Wall Street, like probably one of those two
Mhm.
guys?
Yeah.
Okay. And how was that going for you? Like, did you feel like you had like a pretty good understanding of the concepts by doing that, or was it effective, not effective?
I would say it's not really effective in the sense that I just like regurgitating everything. I just kind of memorize word by word from the guide.
Mhm.
And especially for the question part, all I did was kind of try to memorize all the like answer instead of how to approach these kind of problems. So during one of the interviews, they kind of changed like the word or like the basic concept. Then I don't know like how to tackle that kind of questions.
Yeah, got it. Okay. So, I mean, both of these challenges that you just kind of described, whether it's on the networking side and not really getting a lot of
Mhm.
responses or not having really good conversations, even if you do get a response, and then on the technical side, feeling like you're just memorizing everything and not really understanding it, I feel like
Yeah.
both of those things are something that a lot of students can relate to because that's what most people are typically doing, right? Like there's a
Mhm.
reason why you did it that way too, because that's typically the first thing that people try to do, right? And so, what made you like? How did you find Wall Street Mastermind, and like what made you decide to join a program like this? Because not you could have just kept on doing whatever it is that you were doing, right? I guess obviously you felt like it wasn't as effective as it could be, but what made you want to join a program like this?
Yeah, so it was kind of during the call. Then I was asked by a question, a basic technical question. It was actually on one of the resume guide. I mean, sorry, one of the technical guide,
Yeah.
and I kind of gave the answer. But the answer I heard from the person who's calling me was like, "Oh my God, this question can be answered in this way." It's like there's a real difference between 10-10 answer to like the 8-10 or like 5-10 answer,
Mm.
even though like they have like the same question or like the same answer, but how you're gonna answer the question and craft an answer make a big difference to whoever you're listening to.
Mm.
And on top of that, I think it's really important because kind of resonate with my problem that I don't get a quality kind of feedback from my network emails or like quality costs. So I really want to make a switch to have more effective communication and better networking strategy because in the end, I guess also at the same time, in the end, doesn't matter like what kind of things you have done. It's like what you have done differently from other candidates are gonna make a real difference for you. So I say by considering all these kind of factors, I just want to make a try. I think and a program or definitely worth my time. Yeah.
Got it. So basically, the biggest realization you had was you need more feedback on what you were doing because if you just kept doing
Uh-huh.
everything on your own and not getting the feedback, sometimes you won't be able to identify the things that could be better because that's why you're doing it that way in the first place. Whereas if you could get the feedback and it's quality feedback, then
Yeah.
that can be very eye-opening, and then that like immediately basically improves the way you're doing things, whether it's learning the technicals or how you network or whatever else it is that you need help with, basically.
Yeah.
Okay.
I actually want to stress a part for the quality feedback because I think many people share the same problem that you got like a different answers or like different kind of feedback from your seniors when you ask the same question, but sometimes may kind of very make you go into the wrong direction or go the wrong way. So it's really important to kind of get a quality feedback so you know how to save your time or kind of become more efficient with your time. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So you're just saying, because when you say feedback, like not all feedback is created equal. And
Yeah.
if you get feedback from the wrong person, they might actually steer you down the wrong path, essentially. And I think that's a great point. I mean, because we see that a lot. Like sometimes when we work with students, they'll say, oh, I was taught to do things this way. And then the way they're doing things would be, from my perspective, uh, very, very strange or kind of just like a horrible way to do things, for lack of a better word. And then so I'll ask them like, well, who taught you that? And then they was like, oh, I don't know, the senior at school who got an internship from this bank last year.
Yeah,
He said that that's how he
exactly.
did it. And so I feel like that happens a lot. And not saying that, look, your seniors are always wrong, because they're not. And not saying that your seniors have malicious intent or are trying to, screw you over, because they're not. But, the analogy I always give is, let's say you're trying to become a doctor, right? And you got to go through med school. And as you're in med school, you want to become let's say you want to become a heart surgeon. You're trying to learn how to operate on somebody's heart. Do you want the person who's demonstrating how to operate to be, this doctor who's been operating for 20 years and has done hundreds of operations? Or do you want the person who's demonstrating to be, the guy in residency who's a year above you and was just in your shoes last year, and maybe they're doing this for the first time, or they've gone through the process one time or two times, right? Because like it comes back to the experience, right? Not saying they're not
Yeah.
a little bit ahead of you, but also sometimes even if they're a little bit ahead of you, they might still make mistakes,
Yep.
or they might still give you bad advice, or or more often what I see is they give you advice based on what worked for them specifically, because that's like based on
Sure.
their own experience. But because they're a different candidate than you, and something that worked for them, or maybe a specific interview answer or behavior answer that worked for them, may or may not work for you, right? And so ideally, if you're going to get feedback, to your point about quality feedback, where does that quality come from? The quality comes from, one, experience, and two,
Yep.
it comes from having a large sample size of data to go off of, right? Like
Mhm.
when we give you guys feedback on the behaviorals, like we've seen hundreds of different students and how they answer these questions. So we've seen how your competition is usually answering these questions. So we know, like, oh, this guy answered it this way and they got into this type of bank, and this guy answered it this way and didn't get in, right? For example. And when you collect enough data points like that, that's all data that you can then benefit from, right? And that goes back to your point about how good is the feedback, because
Yeah.
you're the feedback is only useful if it doesn't set you back, right? If it doesn't actually
That's
make
true.
you on the wrong path. So that's a great point. That's a great point that you brought up there. So I guess on that note, though, what exactly did you do after you came into Wall Street Mastermind? Like, what do you feel like you did in Wall Street Mastermind that was actually, helpful for you, that you probably wouldn't have been able to do on your own had you not come in? Like, if you just never joined Wall Street Mastermind, you continue to use the resources you had at your disposal, whether it's the interview guys or the upperclassmen or whatever else. Like, what would be different, if anything?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think the biggest realization for myself is how you actually craft you can answer sorry for every single question you're gonna get during an interview. because as you said, like recruiting itself is pretty idiosyncratic. Everyone is different. So you really have to showcase what's your strengths and advantages against other candidates, or not against, but just like compared to other candidates.
Yeah.
So I mean, the great mentorship, kind of great quality feedback from this program is like literally tell you what is your greatest strength from writing out your behavior stories and how you should approach or tackling certain angles to best showcase or sell yourself in front of a group of bankers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a great point. So basically, you're saying on the behavioral side, especially,
Mm-hmm.
that's
Yeah.
something where if you try to do it on your own, uh, you probably wouldn't be able to identify the things that you need to improve because it's so open ended. It's not like you read your answer that you come up with and you say, "Oh, this is
Scripted.
wrong."
Yeah.
It's not wrong. It's just how can we make it better? And usually, it's hard to figure out the improvements on your own because you're already putting your best foot forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's true. You
Got
need
it.
someone to show the road.
For sure. Um, and what about the technical side? Like, because you mentioned before, you just memorize the guides, right? So obviously,
Mhm.
if you come in Washington Mastermind, we don't make you memorize the guides. But like, how did you, I assume you got better at technicals after coming in, but
Yeah.
like, what enabled you to actually get better at the technicals?
Um, I guess the foundations are really important. You can never realize that you can learn so many things just within a short period of time. Because all these questions are actually based on those concepts and foundations you want to build out first. So just like or a few hours prep, intensive prep on the technicals by watching kind of videos and asking like the kind of questions, like by really getting to the deep like what is going on or what are some different links between different topics. I guess that part really helps me to kind of understand and draw kind of mental like map for myself and
Mm,
for me to really kind of uh, able to deliver the kind of 10-10 answer instead of just like regurgitating everything from the guide.
got it. Okay, so basically, um, instead of memorizing hundreds of different questions and answers to those exact questions, and then hoping that you're going to get asked the exact same questions in your interviews,
Yeah.
you learn the foundational concepts behind the questions first, and in reality there are only so many concepts that you really need to understand, and then it just basically comes down to applying those concepts to whatever questions they ask you. It doesn't matter what variation they throw at you. If you understand the concepts behind it, they're all kind of the same, basically.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's true.
Yeah, that's a great way to explain it. It's like, because look, especially nowadays, I'm sure you can speak to this as well, but interviews are becoming more and more unpredictable, I guess.
Yep,
Like they
that's a
don't
good word.
they don't just ask you, the standard $10 depreciation question from the guy, right? Like, because everybody
Yeah.
knows how to answer that, right? They're asking you actually application type questions where it's open to interpretation, perhaps even where
Uh-huh.
not every single candidate is going to have the same answer, but the depth and the quality of your answer is really going to demonstrate to the interviewer how much you know or don't know, right? And that's how they're separating the best candidates from just the okay candidates, essentially. Um, so the technical side obviously is super important.
Yep.
And then the last piece, I guess, on the application and networking side, because I know, like, I think by the time you had recruited, I think you had a pretty solid resume, right? Like, you had a couple different internships that you had done during the school year, or just like earlier on as underclassmen. I think, like, at smaller banks and things like that. Um, how did you? Because a question that we get from underclassmen all the time is, how do I get relevant experience as an underclassman, because they feel like a lot of these firms won't hire underclassmen. So someone like you, who I felt like had a pretty strong resume, like, how did you go about, building that up, and how did you go about becoming such a good candidate on paper, I guess?
Yeah. I guess networking probably is by far like the most important component for the equation for bank recruitment. So kind of make it a jump. I guess it's very challenging for me at first because I'm coming from an international background and English is not my native language. So what I did was actually to kind of consult with my mentors from the program and just see what are my true weaknesses are and what are some of the improvements I have to make during like this training program. I guess one of the things is definitely kind of personalize your email and try to see how do you see the connections. And the second part is more kind of characteristic based, is being more aggressive. How do you handle different rejections during emails or conversations? So you get more kind of, interaction with the different bankers.
Yeah.
And last but not least, just more kind of strategy based, and when is the best time to send out emails, or like how do you craft your kind of email responses, or during different situations, how are you going to respond to the person? Yeah.
Yeah. Got it. Okay. And if you ever got stuck or you weren't sure how to respond, then basically you can just come and ask us and then we'll help you out, essentially.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So you built up your resume. It sounds like you got a lot more comfortable with networking based on what you just talked about. Had a lot of strategies and tactics behind it. Started getting better results. We talked about the technicals. We talked about the behaviorals. Let's talk about the other thing you mentioned, which is recruiting as an international student.
Yeah, sure.
I think that was a big hurdle, right?
Uh-huh.
Especially this past year, 2020, COVID, a lot of
That's true.
banks, a lot of banks. I don't know how you felt, but from where I'm sitting, comparing year over year, I feel like a lot fewer banks sponsored visas this
Mhm.
year versus the year prior, right?
That's true.
And,
Yeah.
and I don't know if you found that to be true, but what was that like having to navigate through that, and how did you how did you deal with that, I guess, as an international student?
Yeah. I guess it's really different from the past, both in terms of like the public, like the company right now have like a public policy that they don't sponsor. And most of the time, even you have spoken to like a few guys on the team, you still cannot pass the HR round because right now they don't have like, you can't do coffee chat or other type of things to kind of make it more kind of better connections. So
Yeah.
it was a really long recruitment cycle for me last year. I think the first thing you have to do definitely be mentally prepared, especially coming from international student background. And also at the same time, it's kind of a number game. So you have to reach out as many people as possible. You definitely should have a list of banks you want to reach out to, or like the banks that really sponsor at first, to save your time and also be more focused, and try to reach out to as many people as possible from these banks to see if
Yeah.
you got a shot. Yeah.
Yeah. um and in terms of this list,
Mhm.
how did you go about it? Like, did you basically say, like, try to figure out which banks are actually sponsoring versus not, and then if someone's not sponsoring, you'll just cross them off your list and only focus on the ones that will sponsor? Or was there like a methodology to how you went about that?
Yeah, most of the cases just only focus on those who sponsor, because these are really different. Even if you spoke to like VP, they probably won't push your resume forward because of HR issue. You even won't pass like HR round. So I would say just kind of save your energy and focus more onto those those banks that sponsor. But you're looking for like the smaller banks or kind of middle market, try your luck. Probably because they don't really have a very rigid like structure in terms of like what kind of people they want to recruit. Yeah.
But how did you figure out if a bank
Mhm.
actually sponsors or not? Or is it that you didn't try to figure out
Okay.
whether they sponsor or not? You just try to talk to everybody and see where the conversation leads. Like, what? How did you go about that?
Yeah. First of all, I just kind of like reading all the posts, or reading kind of, especially from the company's website. They if they want to sponsor, definitely post that. And at the same time, I think there's a kind of trick you learn in this Wall Street Mastermind program, that you go to certain website and look for like certain information there.
Yeah,
And by talking to seniors, like a secondary sources, primary sources, also a good place to start.
Got it. Okay. Well, I appreciate you for not giving away the secret sauce.
Yeah.
Got it. But regardless, so you did your research. You triangulated through a lot of different sources,
Mhm.
whether a firm sponsor or not, and then you try to focus on the ones that did. Um, in general, like roughly speaking, how many firms out there did you find that actually were willing to sponsor this year? Do you have like a rough count?
I would say fewer than 20.
Fewer than 20. Okay. Yeah, so it's not a
Yeah.
lot, right? And
Yeah.
and so obviously, you focus on those and then you apply, you network with as many people there as possible. Like how many interviews did you end up having to go through? Or how many firms did you end up going through interviews with?
I would say around 5 to 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So you got 5 or 6 interviews, right? Which is pretty good. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't get any. So you have 5 or 6 interviews, and then in the end, I think you got obviously you probably took the first offer that you got, right? Because it's like hard enough to just
Yeah.
get an offer. And so you got your offer around what is it, November, December?
Late December. Pretty much like the
Late,
new year. Yeah.
late December. So that's about, and you started with us in November. So that was like a 13-month process then, basically, from the
That's
time you
true. Uh-huh.
joined the program and kind of went through the entire process and grinded your way through to the offer. It's about 13 months. And so ultimately, what kind of offer did you get? Like, are you comfortable sharing that with people?
Yeah, sure. I got an offer. I'll be joining one of the middle market technology team on the West Coast. Yeah.
Okay. So middle market bank, TMT banking,
Yeah.
out here on the West Coast. Got it. And um, is that like, was tech what you wanted to do, or were you trying to stay on the West Coast, or were you also recruiting for the East Coast, or?
I guess more like a tech is more like a my thing because probably because I kind of my background, I want to make a switch from CS to banking in the first place. I get more interest and passion for technology companies. The kind of
Yeah,
reason why I'm probably going to stay in San Francisco in the future if that's possible.
that's a great point. I mean, you do have a CS background, which is probably beneficial for you. I'll tell you, I'll be honest. Like when I was a tech banker,
Uh-huh.
uh, and I was an analyst, sometimes when you cover one of these really technical companies, like their product is really, really technical,
Yeah,
not like a Facebook or a Google or, like everybody understands what they
internet.
do. But like some of these tech companies are like really technical. And then
Uh-huh.
as an analyst, you're just like, I have no idea what this company does. But like, I'm just gonna like, and my job is to put together the model and make sure the numbers are right. And then like, the MD will figure out what the company is doing. But like, obviously, that's not ideal, right? Like, if you actually
Yeah,
know and understand the product, or you can speak the language, or coding a little bit, or whatever, that's always a competitive advantage, right? And it always
yeah.
helps you do a better job. So
Trying
I
to get
think,
an edge.
yeah, so I think that's great. And I think also the other thing is, I think TMT is one of the best places to be
Hmm.
in terms of like going forward. If we're looking ahead to where the puck is going, right? Like where this industry is going. I think
Yep.
a lot of the fees, more and more so, a lot of the deal fees are being generated in the technology space, right? Because a lot of these technology companies that are doing M&A deals, a lot of technology companies that are going public, and so that's, I think, one of the fastest growing areas within banking. Or even if you don't want to stay in banking, let's say a lot of people do 2 years and they leave, then maybe you want to go work in tech afterwards. Well, it's a lot easier to go work in tech afterwards if you did tech banking versus,
That's true.
if you did FIG or something, right? Because I mean, I
Yeah,
did that. I worked in tech banking, then I did tech PE, and then I worked
yeah.
at a couple of different tech startups. And it was like everything I did before still helped me later on in my career, right? And so I
Hmm.
think that's really cool too. And I mean, I don't really think there's really a better industry to be in long term than I mean, aside from finance and tech, like those are probably the two top industries in my opinion, right? So that's awesome. I guess my last question for you is if you could give one piece of advice to our listeners, maybe one piece of advice that you wish someone else had given you back when you were first, like let's say a year ago when you were first starting this process,
There we go.
something that you know now in hindsight, like what is that one thing that you would want to tell people?
Oh yeah. So if you like make up your minds and you want to do banking, probably you should join the program as soon as possible. I mean, don't waste your time listening to the bad advices or spending 5 or 6 months and just sending out a bunch of emails, get no reply.
Yeah. Um, just to be clear, I did not pay Sam to say that,
Nah.
but no, but I think joking aside, your point is just if you already know for sure that banking is something that you want to do,
Mhm.
time is of the essence, and rather than trying to waste a bunch of time trying to see if you can figure it out on your own first and then failing, the best thing to do is to just try to take your best shot from the very beginning and
Yep.
maximize the amount of time and the number of opportunities you have by doing it the right way from the get-go.
Yeah, that's right.
Got it. Okay. That's great advice, man. So, I mean, I think, look, the reason why I say that's great advice for those of you who are listening is that typically what we found is that with the recruiting timeline, all the most popular banks or the most prestigious, whatever you want to call it, bulge bracket early boutique banks, right? Like typically those banks fill up their classes first, right? And then like the longer it takes you, the fewer jobs that are left, and then you start to get not just anxious, like oh crap, what if like I run out of time or I run out of opportunities, but also the longer you wait, the further downstream you're going to have to go, right? And then people a lot of times don't think about that. They think it's like this binary thing of like either I get in or I don't. But it's also even if you do get in, like what is the best bank that you could possibly get into, right? And
Yep.
we always talk about like the sooner you can be prepared by, the sooner you'll be able to get an offer, and probably most likely the better the offer is going to be, right? Especially in a year like this last year, who knows if this will happen again? Hopefully not. But in a year with the pandemic and COVID, there will definitely be another recession or another market crash in the future. But in a
Yeah.
year like that, you want to be ahead of the curve even more because there's fewer opportunities available, right? So if you take too long, then the window kind of closes off sooner
Mhm.
than you expect, and then that's the last thing you want to happen. And as an international student,
Yeah.
if there are fewer than 20 firms that actually sponsor, once those firms are done, you're done, right? Then you
Yeah.
gotta probably
You
go
get
work
no
in,
choice.
well, you gotta go work in Asia or go work in Europe or wherever it is that you're actually from, assuming you can even do that, which you may not be able to, right?
Mhm.
Um, so that's great advice. Look, guys, I think to kind of really sum things up, if you're in a similar situation where maybe you're an international student or maybe you're recruiting and you don't have a whole lot of resources available to you, or maybe you're just like looking to get that quality feedback, which you currently don't have people around you that can provide you with that, and you're not sure if what you're doing is, really the right way to do it or the best way to go about things, then I want to encourage you to reach out to our team. You can do that by scheduling just a free strategy session with us. You can do that by going to www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The streets abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. And basically, what we'll do on this call is we'll ask you some questions to learn more about your situation. What is it that you're trying to accomplish? What kind of banks are you trying to get into? What kind of challenges are you currently experiencing? What do you need feedback on? And then, depending on what you tell us, we'll do our best to give you our advice on what we think is going to be the most effective for you, right? And regardless of whether that means working with us or not, at a minimum, we'll tell you what we think you should do, right? And then you can either do that with our help, or you can go do that on your own. Doesn't really matter. But at a minimum, you can get quality advice from a quality source that you know is not going to steer you wrong. So if you guys want to do that, we look forward to talking to you. But otherwise, Sam, I want to thank you for taking so much time out of your day to talk to us today. And I know you have a midterm coming up next week, so I don't want to take up too much more of your time. But congratulations again on the offer,
Thank you.
especially getting one as an international student in 2020. I think that's really, honestly, quite the accomplishment. And look forward to seeing what you accomplish this upcoming summer. And also, I'm sure we'll continue to be in touch going forward in the future too.
Thanks. I mean, I just want to say thank you as well because you're giving me so much help during the process. Yeah.
Hey, that's what we're here for, just doing our job, right? And it always gives us a lot of satisfaction when we see our clients like yourself and all of our other clients get that offer after such a long, grueling process, right?
Excruciating.
Excruciatingly painful, yes. And so we're just here to try to make it a little bit less painful so that you don't die from this process. But no, joking aside, but no, honestly, I mean, you earned it, right? You had to work your butt off, and we're honored to have been able to play a small part in it. So but guys, that'll be it for today. Thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back again with more of these interviews for you guys in the near future. And until then, we'll talk to you next time. All right. Bye.